joined us. He's one of the earlier speakers, so we'll give it about a minute before we start. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us. Please confirm that you can see my screen. I have shared a window. Are you able to see it?
Hi, Andrew. Yes, we can see. Probably needs to be put in presentation mode.
Right, perfect. In the interest of time, I will flip the presentation a bit. We'll try and be a bit creative, but make sure that the content is adequately delivered without, even with the change schedule. So welcome to this webinar on unpacking the COP29 agenda on Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. It's organized by the Eastern Africa Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance, together with our partners, the GIZ and the RCC of East and Southern Africa. It's scheduled to be a 1.5 hour presentation. After opening remarks from Tiras, if Perumal has joined us, we will then go straight into his presentation, followed by another presentation from El Haj Mbaye Dian. Then we'll have an interactive session, Q&A, which I will lead, followed by closing remarks. We'll try and keep the presentation simple, straightforward, to the point, but packed with information to make the best of this time. Please feel free to note any questions in the chat, and we will direct these questions to the right person to respond to them. And again, to reiterate, This presentation will be recorded for the purposes of sharing, for the purposes of record keeping as well. I will just check if Perumal has joined. Perumal, you're welcome. I'm pleased to have you here. So I think, yes, we will confirm the agenda as is. And I would like to welcome Tiras, the chair of the Eastern Africa Alliance on Carbon Markets and Climate Finance, to provide us 5 minutes of opening remarks. Tiras, please feel free to share your screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon all. So on the behalf of East African Alliance on Carbon Market and Climate Finance, it's my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to this important webinar on a pre-COP29 briefing on the agenda of Article 6 of Paris Agreement. As you know all, one of the main objectives of the Alliance is to promote the long-term position and participation of the members countries in the international climate change negotiation. So in line with this goal, all national focal points were supported by the Alliance to participate on the upcoming COP29. In addition, every year, pre-COP training were organized to build the capacity of the national focal points on the negotiation of the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. So hence, the objective of this webinar is to give briefing on the pending Article 6 negotiation issue, especially on operationalizing the Article 6.4 mechanism. There are some issues which are not finalized yet, which are the authorization, registry, and corresponding adjustment. I hope in this upcoming COP29, those issues will be finalized and countries will able to implement Article 6 fully. So with this, I would like to thank the organizer, especially East African Alliance Coordinator, GIZ, Global Carbon Market Project in the RCC. And also, I would like to thank to the UNFCCC representatives, Perumal and the agent Mumbai, who are here to give us a briefing on the pending issues of the Article 6. So finally, I would like to wish you all productive and successful deliberation of this webinar, and have a nice stay. Thank you. Over to you, Andrew.
We'll, in the interest of time, I think we'll move on to our next agenda item. Perumal, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure we do have most of us have engaged with you in some capacity in the past. But if you could make, I guess, a brief introduction about yourself and then dive straight into your presentation. The floor, or rather the screen, is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Myself, Perumal, manager within the mitigation division in UNFCCC. Overseeing the intergovernmental negotiations on market-related issues, both Article 6, International Transaction Log, and the CDM for this year, and associated with Article 6 since Paris. And in addition to that, I also manage the aspects related to regulatory aspects on 6.4, review in 6.2, capacity building, stakeholder interaction, and general strategy advice to the organization related to carbon markets. So that's a bit of mine, and I don't do it alone. I have a good team of close to about 25 people all across helping me to do all these things. So I'll just jump into the topic, and following me, I think we have Mbai as well. So he might be able to contribute more from the African group perspective. So I'll cover the issues, and then he can go forward. So under Article 6, as you know, that there are three items, Article 6.2, 6.4, and 6.8. And also you will have an agenda item on CDM. Since it is the alliance partners, and I'm sure that everybody knows what each of the articles are, so I will directly jump into the issues. So under the Article 6.2, I would say that there are, in total, there were 18 issues to be considered under the COP, of which in June in Bonn, about 5 issues have been moved to the 3 to delegated to the Secretariat, namely the confidentiality, the confidentiality, the issue on common nomenclatures, and also the issue on code of conduct for the technical expert reviewers. These have been completed, and you can find this information in the CARP website of the UNFCCC. Then the conversations around the avoidance is also moved to 2028. That makes the number of issues to be discussed. If you go back to the Bonn text, you have to discuss about 14 different issues in Article 6.2, some bigger issues, some smaller issues. So among which I would categorize the 4 on the slide now are the showstoppers of successful delivery of Article 6.2. This by no means to say that other issues are not important or they may not be discussed, but I would say that movement is crucial in all these 4 in order for us to have a productive outcome. So the first and foremost topic is the authorization. So here there are 4 sub-elements within this authorization, namely the types, format, content, and changes to the authorization. And in the type of authorization and the scope, there's one view that you need to have authorization for 3 components, the cooperative approach, the entities, and the ITMOs. To relate that to an example, say for example that if 2 countries are cooperating, you would be cooperating amongst yourself based on a particular framework or MOU, etc. So this is the authorization of that cooperation itself, which you would be having to provide an initial report, which will elaborate, the first 3 sections will elaborate about the different participation requirements and other elements of the guidance. And the last part is about the cooperative approach themselves. The second one is the entities. Like if 2 countries are cooperating, you may identify certain entities within your country to interact. So that's the authorization of the entity. And the last one is the outcome themselves. When the activity is implemented, it generates mitigation outcomes. And when they are transferred internationally, they become ITMOs. So the question here is that, do you need to have separate authorization for each of them, or the authorization is limited only to ITMOs? And whether these need to be submitted in a sequential manner or whether they can all be submitted at once. So the conversation in Bonn has multiple options on the table. The workshop conversations in Baku, the intersessional workshop from 2nd to the 4th of October, there seems to be a growing consensus around that you would need an authorization for all the 3. but also that it can be either submitted in a sequential manner or it can be submitted in one unified process. In terms of format, so the authorization, like I think I jumped into the types of authorization. So authorization is the foundational requirement for something to be called from a mitigation outcome to to an ITMO, because that's where the host country is taking obligation. And also with that authorization, the outcome of those mitigation outcome could be used for compliance purposes. So it has both the legality, and also it also has the obligation for the host country from an accounting perspective. So the second issue is in the format, whether or not the format will be developed at a top-down basis by the COP, or it will be left for each country to determine their own format, or there should be no form at all from the UNFCCC process. In the conversations that we had in Baku early this month, there's a growing convergence towards a voluntary form or a template, provided the shall and the should requirements are correctly identified. Meaning, if there are requirements that needs to be part of the authorization statement as agreed before, or even if there are new additional items that will be identified in this current session, and if they are a shall requirement, then the form will have the mandatory elements of them to be contained, whereas the form with other good to haves will have a should function as a good practice guidance. So the format will be voluntary, and the content, as I indicated, would be either a shall and a should requirement will be differentiated. The last issue is in relation to the changes to the authorization. This is primarily if once you have already authorized, in what circumstances and situations you can revoke that authorization, and under what situations that you can change those authorization. Again, the conversations in Baku is leaning towards one common principle that if any transfers have already taken, you cannot have a retrospective impact of revocation, because it will have both market uncertainty and accounting uncertainty. So that seems to be leaning towards some kind of a common understanding. And the second one that emerged in Baku was more about, as I said before, as part of the reporting requirement, once you have authorized, you need to provide an initial report. And within that initial report, the country can elaborate, like in any traditional commercial contract that you might enter with, you may have an exit clause in any commercial contract. And I think where people might agree upon is that when under what circumstances, like, has to be elaborated upfront in providing a transparent information. The second issue, this is about the authorization. There's one more issue on 6.4 authorization, which I will come when we are discussing 6.4. The second issue is about sequencing, and this is something very close to the hearts of the African group. There is within the different reporting requirements, there are initial reports, annual information, and regular information. And the first of which is the initial report. And when they are reviewed, there was a review that happened last week. Mbai was participated in that review as one of the lead reviewers. So once you have identified some areas of improvement, can the subsequent submission of process or the transfers can happen, or they have to wait until the issue is resolved? So here there are different views still. We do not yet know where the emerging consensus is. because there's one view that you cannot, 4 reviewers cannot stop the whole transfer and transaction a country can undertake. While on the other side, people say that the only place where the transparency and integrity of such cooperative approach is assessed is at this level. So you should not engage in further processes unless the issues identified are resolved. So this is something we have to see the conversation in Baku on where they are moving. The third issue is the registries. And within this registry conversation, UNFCCC is tasked to establish an international registry. And the issue here is that would that international registry allow to hold and transfer units, or they are just an accounting registry where only the information is stored, but you cannot transact. Again, African group is closer to the transaction, while some of the other countries are closer to them being just an information registry or an accounting registry. The last one is the tables. Anybody who are listening here, if you have followed Article 13, I'm sure that you might have developed so many tables in Katowice and then in Glasgow as well for some of the reporting requirements. So here as well for annual information submission, there's a conversation happening on the finalization of the table. In Sharm el-Sheikh, we had 2 versions. So some countries are saying that we continue to use those as the base versions. We use them. We will see the experience of its use, and then we come back in 2028 and adopt AEF. That's one view. Second view is that no, we have to develop an AEF and complete in this session. Within that, there are 2 divergent views. One feels that all what needs to be reported has already been decided in Glasgow and Sharm, so there shouldn't be any additional elements to be added. Whereas there are other set of people who feel that more information needs to be added. So this is not political as such, nor deeply technical. This is more about the time that is needed to complete the forms based on what we decide on the other 3 issues. So those are, I would say, the 4 showstopper issues in 6.2. And under 6.4, again, there's one issue that's closer to the African hearts, which I think Mbai will go, which is about when can you authorize an A64 units. The current approved modalities and procedures says that it needs to be done either at the time of the registration, requesting for registration, the time at the request for issuance. And then flexibility is being sought. There were some compromise text that was produced in Dubai that is getting refined to address everybody's concern. So that conversation is going on. The second issue is if as you know, in 6.4, you can actually issue 2 classes of units. One is for voluntary purposes, and one for compliance purposes. For compliance, you do need to have an authorization. So the question is, if you don't have an authorization, can by default, they can be issued as MCUs or not? So this is again something related to the whether or not that in all circumstances you need some kind of an communication or authorization by a host party. The mechanism registry issue is similar to the issue that we discussed earlier in the registry. So this, without the one below that you are seeing in the box, the rest of the 6 issues, like the 4 in the this slide and 2 in this slide, will be discussed under the substar track. But you will also have a CMA track that will be considering the recommendations from the supervisory body that has been tasked to develop recommendations related to methodologies and removals. The supervisory body has completed its work by developing these recommendations as standards and has requested guidance from the CMA on the approach that they have taken and also any additional guidance that contains within those standards that they have adopted. The issue here will be that how much deep that parties would like to engage on the recommendations prepared by the supervisory body out of their hard work for last 2.5 years, and it's a 40-page document. Can that be assessed in greater detail, in full depth, and in a greater engagement, or you identify specific issues and provide additional guidance? So that's something that we need to see. And this is also an area where the incoming COP presidency is requesting if the SBM recommendations can be adopted in the beginning plenary of the COP. And they are having conversations with various groups and parties in asking if they would be agreeable to go for that approach. So here, one particular issue that we heard from the pre-COP time was that some of the countries, particularly RED Plus countries or RED Plus coalition for rainforest nations, who are most active in the RED Plus, wanted 6.4 not to allow forestry activities. But that's not a common view that's been held by many other groups and parties. So we do really need to see how that particular group would be reacting. But from the pre-COP, we heard from most of the groups and parties. Of course, pre-COP is not an inclusive, all-inclusive, every country process. So based on the invitation that they have sent to 50 plus, including certain groups, 13 plus groups, which comprises so many more countries within that, there was a general support that was stated by most of the head of delegations or ministers in the pre-COP to have an early adoption of the SBM recommendation in Baku. But in this process, until anything is done, you can't take it for guarantee. But this is something that might be attempted by the COP president. The issue time being, like there were previously a lot of issues about permanence and other technical issues have been discussed. But I don't see that there will be deeper conversations on this recommendation, except for the process or procedural question on the supervisory body developing it as its own standards. This is the poor one on the block, which is the Article 6.8. Not the poor one, sorry for using that word, but 6.8 is the only article which had a positive outcome in Dubai out of the Article 6 package. So currently the non-market-based approaches, the work program is going for an expedite and simple assessment of its work program. There was a submission request by 31st August. We received about 8 submissions. The synthesis is being prepared, and there will be an in-session workshop, including a roundtable on sharing information on NMAs submitted to the NMA platform. This platform is functional since 1st of May. We have 9 support providers and about 60 countries that have registered to this platform. The expectation is that the GCNMA will be recommending further work within its work program for the year. And the last item within the market cluster, not on Article 6, is the CDM. So again, here there are 2 tracks, one under the SUBSTA and one under the CMP. The one under the CMP is for providing further guidance to the CDM EB for its function. And under the SUBSTA, there are 2 things considered. One is in terms of the further breakdown on the level of resources needed for the activities under the CDM. And then the last one is in terms of within the available resources that are in the CDM Trust Fund. The technical paper was published earlier this week. So it has identified certain current reserves and where it can possibly be used. So there will be a conversation on two things. One, until what time the pre-2020 issuance under the CDM should continue, and then how the existing trust fund reserves should be used and for what purposes. In Dubai, there was an agreement that as and when that it is being transferred, without the quantum, there will be a proportion that will go to adaptation fund, or everything goes to adaptation fund. That is not there, but whenever there is a distribution, adaptation fund should also be receiving some amount. With that, I give the floor back to the room. These are 6.2, 6.4, 6.8, and the CDM.
Thank you very much for that in-depth presentation. I would encourage any questions that will come as a follow-up to that. Please post them in the chat. In the interest of time, I will welcome Ajim Baidian. In the same spirit, we have interacted. Very many of us are familiar with each other. But after I would request you to make a brief introduction and then dive straight into your presentation. And we will follow your request not to share the presentation until after you have communicated to after you have provided it to after you have communicated at your next event. That's next Wednesday. So thank you very much.
Do you see my presentation?
Now we see your presentation.
Okay.
So, welcome. Thank you very much.
Okay. Is it clear in mod presentation? Japo? Is it clear?
It's clear, yes.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for this invitation. And sorry for not being able to join you earlier and not to stay for all the meeting. I will make a very brief presentation on the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement in Baku. I say I will not go through this. Perumal already presented the three mechanism and approaches under the Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, addressed through 6.2 and 6.3 for the cooperative approaches, the 6.4 to 6.7 for the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism, and for the framework for non-market-based approaches, 6.8 to and 6.9 paragraph. I just wanted every time to show this graph showing very clearly that under Article 6, you have what is the most important is what I'm showing here. You have authorized units or non-authorized units. But the authorized units may come from bilateral agreements, direct cooperative approaches. Those units may also come from independent standards like Gold Standard, Vera, GCC, and so on. And those units may also come from the Article 6.4. If they are authorized, they can be used for NDCs, for CORSIA, but also for voluntary commitments. If those units are not authorized, they can come from the independent standard, or they can come from the 6.4 mechanism. And they can be only used for voluntary cooperation, co-commitment, or domestic or regional scheme, or result-based finance. But what we need to know is all authorized ITMO are subject to corresponding adjustment. If you authorize units, you can no more use those units to meet your NDC. That is the most important element you have to take into account when it comes to Article 6 and the main changes introduced by Article 6 in the carbon market. When units are authorized, they cannot be used to meet the parties' NDC. And to be used for another country's NDC or CORSIA, you need to have the authorization. So the host country will play a crucial role in the carbon market with the Article 6. Now I will present very quickly the outcome from last June, SAPSA 60. We have decided that we will not continue the discussion on common nomenclature. It was an agenda item. We also discussed, we will not continue to discuss the information that are confidential, and we let the Secretariat to work on that. We also decided that we will postpone the discussions on emission avoidance. All of that under Article 6.2. We, in last June, issue a draft text that will be the basis of our discussion. It's a draft presented by the SAPSA, which will be discussed in the next SAPSA 61 before being adopted by the CMA. And we also decided in last June that we will have an hybrid workshop. We already had it last October, and where we discuss the authorization, the agreed electronic format, the sequencing, the application of first transfer, how to address the inconsistency, and the issue regarding registries in 6.2. And we agreed that we will continue with the consideration of that draft text, taking into account the discussion we had in this workshop for making a proposal, a recommendation for a draft decision in CMA 6 in November. But there are still these issues that are pending: the scope and definition of cooperative approaches, the authorization, first transfer, agreed electronic format report, the tables, the sequencing, the inconsistencies, the special circumstances of LDCs, the additional functionality of the international registry, as well as the financial resource for 6.2. That are the general issues that are still outstanding. But as presented by Perumal, there are 4 of them that are crucial. They are the ones we already discussed in the workshop, in relation to authorization, in relation to the agreed electronic format, in relation to the inconsistency, and to the registries. When it comes now to 6.4, here also in last discussion at SAPSA 60 in June, we discussed that we will not continue the discussion on further responsibility of the supervisory body, as well as the host country, and we will postpone that discussion in 2028. We also decided that the discussions around emission avoidance and conservation announcement will be discussed only in 2028. But we clearly stated that conservation announcement is not a separate agenda item than the one discussed under the removals and emission reductions. And in conclusion, in 6.4, we also decided, had a draft text, and we, with all the different positions and options, we requested the Secretary to organize a workshop, a hybrid one. Is the same than the 6.2, where we discussed authorization and mechanism registry. And based on all of that, we agree that we will forward the text we got in June with the discussion we had in the workshop for discussions at SAPSA 61 with a view to make a recommendation for a decision in CMA 4. And as said by Perumal, we have still the authorization issue, which is a very important issue still pending. The registry, 6.4 registry, the share of proceed for adaptation for LDCs. And also there is another issue, the transition of CDM, afforestation, and reforestation activities. If you remember well, we had the transition of CDM activities, but the supervisory body addresses only the emission reduction project under the CDM to transition in the 6.4. The project activities related to afforestation and deforestation are still pending. And as said by Perumal, we will have the recommendation of the CMA. And here we need to be very clear. The supervisory body had a mandate to make recommendations on requirement for the development and assessment of methodology, and also recommendation on how to address activities involving removals, and to make a recommendation to the CMA for adoption. It's what we try in Sharm el-Sheikh as well as in Dubai. We didn't, as supervisory body, succeed to get this recommendation made by the supervisory body to be adopted by the CMA. From Dubai, we received from the CMA a mandate to operationalize the Article 6.4. And based on that, and the previous mandate received by the supervisory body, that supervisory body decided to recommend to the CMA to take note of the work and endorse its mode of work, which is to transform those recommendations into draft standard for development and assessment of methodology, another standard for activities involving removals. So the supervisory body developed two standards and request the CMA to endorse its mode of work and take note of the adoption of those standards by the supervisory body. It's what it is said here. The supervisory body, SBM, recommend the CMA to take note of the adoption of the standard on methodologies and removals, and also recommend the CMA to take note that the SBM will expeditiously elaborate and implement those standards and receive any guidance, additional guidance from the CMA. So now, instead of coming with recommendation to be considered and adopted by the CMA, we come with standards already adopted by the SBM, and we request the CMA to take note of that adoption and also to approve, to endorse the mode of work of the SEA and provide any guidance if needed. And every year, you see it in 25, every year the SBM will report on how it has implemented those standards, and the CMA will provide additional guidance if needed. And on 6.8, I will not go through that because Perumal presented very well. We know that the supervisory, the web-based platform is already operational. We just wanted parties as well as providers to submit concrete activities that will be implemented. We will also do the assessment of the first phase that will inform the second phase. And we had also some decisions on the CDM in relation to the trust fund as well as the future of the CDM. We will continue the discussion to see what to do with the CDM. While the 6.4 is not currently fully operational. Second, we have still some funds under the CDM Trust Fund, how to forward that fund to the adaptation fund and also to other entities, including the 6.4, including capacity building, including the 6.2, and some are requesting money also for response measure. The next step, we, as said by Perumal, we already had the training for the Article 6 review. We had the joint workshop 6.2 and 6.4, where we discuss authorization, the agreed electronic format report, the tables, the first transfer, the sequencing, addressing inconsistency, and the registries, both the international registry and the mechanism registry. We had the meeting of the Paris Agreement Crediting Mechanism Supervisory Body, which adopted the standards on methodology and removals and made recommendation to the CMA. You can see those recommendations in its report as well as in the addendum. We had pre-COP in Baku with head of delegation and ministers. And as said by Perumal, they are pushing for having a decision on Article 6 at the early stage in Baku. We have already conducted the review of the initial report of Switzerland, Ghana, Thailand, Guyana, Vanuatu, and Suriname. We will have preparatory meeting the first week with the LDCs, SEEDs, AGN, G77, during which if you have any view or any position from your region or your country, you have to be there and table those positions. We will have also an AGN Article 6 workshop on the 10th of November, all day. And after that, we will start the meeting with the Substar 61 and SBI 61 for 1 week to discuss all those issues and make draft recommendation to the CMA 6. And the COP, as well as the CMP and the CMA, will meet the second week and take decisions that will be considered as the decision from the COP29. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alaj, for that presentation. I think it provides a lot of context on the issues that we will be dealing with during the COP29. And in recognition of your time limitation, I will request that we go straight to the interactive session so that at least you may provide a bit of input. We do have a first question coming in from Rita Rukundo from JSAT in Uganda. She appreciates the presentation from Perumal. But the question is, less than 100 countries have officially submitted their DNAs. Do you envisage that this is in any way going to impact the negotiation position of parties for the outstanding issues such as authorization?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. I would say no. It is I think it's a process, and it takes time. And having 100 is a remarkable number. I think I internally betted for 75 by end of this year, and it has surpassed that 75. And no, the response is that number of 100 will not impact the negotiation outcomes by any way.
Okay, thank you very much. I will request for any questions, any remarks right now. Just raise your hand. You'll be recognized and the floor will be opened. Is there any question? Not seeing hands.
In any case, I will invite colleagues to be present at the preparatory meetings, the LDCs, CIT, and AGN, as well as the G77 in China preparatory meeting, where all the outstanding issues will be discussed to refine our position. And if they have any view in whatever issue, that will be the place where those views will be tabled, discussed, adopted, and supported by any group. And also, as I said, on the 10th, we will organize an Article 6 workshop with the two alliances, West African Alliance, East African Alliance, and supported by Conservation International with the RCCs and the UNFCCC. And we will have that meeting for a full day to go in depth in those issues and see how our position will be refined together with colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much for highlighting that. It has been a topic of discussion actually amongst the different members of the alliance through their focal points. We have got confirmation that the Eastern Africa Alliance will be well represented both by the focal points and a couple of countries have indicated that they will send alternates as well. We'll continue to send out any information regarding that as the date approaches, but yes, we'll hope for your due diligence as that meeting pans out. Thank you. Any questions?
And also, I wanted here to really thank the UNFCCC and Perumal personally, who is very supportive to both alliance, West African Alliance and East African Alliance, and through the RCC, doing a very great job to allow the African group and African countries to effectively participate in this new carbon market area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So one area that we as the Alliance have not really engaged much in, and I think there's an opportunity there. I think it was Perimo who described it as the poor one, Article 6.8. The structures are progressing, but what really are the prospects in there? Is it something that the governments should anyone can pick this up, either a large.
Just I will start and let Perumal continue. We have been requested in last COP CMA in Dubai for each country to nominate a 6.8 focal point. Each country has to nominate a 6.8 focal point. And that focal point is the one interacting between UNFCCC and the stakeholders within its country. We also requested the Secretariat to include a capacity building program of 6.8 within the global capacity building program under Article 6 to allow people to better understand the activities that may be conducted, the challenges, the benefits, advantage, all within for the Article 6.8 and make it more understandable by the people and making different communities, different entities to benefit through projects and programs on the ground from the Article 6.8. The first phase was to implement all the infrastructure. Now we will move to the second phase, which will be the implementation, having real activities and needs to be submitted to the platform through that national focal point and to be fulfilled by some providers. So we are in a crucial period when it comes to 6.8, both to ensure that our people, our population, our entities understand very well the possibilities, the opportunities, and for 6.8, and to submit concrete activities through their focal point, and also governments to nominate their focal points and support them in doing the awareness that is needed and the capacity building. That is at that point, we will go through the real phase, which will be the implementation, but we have a very important role to play, and also the alliances as well, the RCCs, to support our country to benefit from this one, because we will have activities on the ground that will support mitigation, adaptation, technology transfer, finance, and that will not involve the international transfer of mitigation outcome, that will not impact negatively the achievement of your NDC, while they will contribute to support some activities in your NDC. It's very important to see how we can benefit from that mechanism. Now I let also Perumal, if he has something to add it in that 6.8.
No, thank you. No, I think Mbayo covered. Oftentimes we mistake that that's the only fully functional component within the Article 6. And then there could be different expectations, like 6.8 to function as a kind of a matchmaking tool, or providing channels for direct finance or investment. This can only be effectively happening when the platform itself is being used. Like, there's only to a degree that something could be done. So the platform was expected to be delivered by June session. We were able to deliver that ahead of time. Our team, I'm sure that, like, my colleagues who are part of my team, are reaching out to every country to identify what kind of efforts can be included in the NMA. As I told you, that there are 9 support providers that have identified themselves, and then some of them are very well-known names, like the local initiative, the AFDBs, the ABM mechanism, etc., etc. And then how does that, from a work program level, we capitalize on this platform, is something like, I think the parties have to look for that opportunity, because there are times that, like, there's going to be an interplay between 6.8 and 6.4 mitigation contribution units, for example, because 6.8 is more about information exchange, and it's an exchange platform, whereas 6.4, the MCUs might provide the necessary degree of MRV for people to really look at the impacts of a given action or the contributions that they are making. So I think it's more about more NMAs being registered within that platform is what it helps, because we as a secretariat almost reaching out on every single country. I'm sure that we are having conversations in helping the countries to submit if they have any NMAs, but you need a cooperating partner in order for that to be. That's what the parties have decided. Article 6 is all about cooperative implementation. So we cannot identify something as an individual independent NMA. That is something might come now. There is an opportunity that the expedite process of looking at the work program, there could be some decisions coming from 6.8 saying that even countries should be allowed to individually register an NMA approach. And then, of course, the automated matchmaking will not happen. But then, based on who the service providers are, Secretariat can facilitate in the background, not through the system, but as a background to provide that kind of a matchmaking support. I would suggest that through the alliances is to identify if there are any existing non-market based approaches. Cooperation is to bring forward to the platform. Because unless that we fought for a platform, we got the platform. I know that like we are going behind asking countries to nominate the focal points for the non-market based approaches platform. I do not know the current records, but I think we are somewhere around 70. Still quite a far from that. And then another improvement that might be possible, as I told you, is that in order for an NMA to be registered in this platform and for public visualization, and then to have necessary finance flowing in, it has to be an identified cooperation already within the NMA. So that something could come out of this negotiations in saying that you can have a separate section where individual countries can put forward project ideas for non-market based approaches. That could be an outcome that could come out. That might facilitate more NMAs added to the platform, and then somebody looking at that platform and support providers coming forward and assisting countries. That could happen.
Thank you. I think that's a pretty in-depth response. It actually does show that once you have a system in place, the opportunities within there are boundless. I really hope that we will be able to get through with the regulations, especially around Article 6.2 and 6.4. Quite often there is a spanner thrown into the works, a curveball. I don't know if this is a place to ask, but is there the potential for any curveballs to come into this process? Because the hope is that this is a COP that is going to deliver on the regulations for comprehensive implementation of Article 6. Either of you can take this on. Are we still connected?
Yeah, I'm connected, but I was not very clear on the question.
Okay, so I was saying, I noticed Belhaj was actually speaking.
No, I said I just I need more clarification on your question.
Yes. Oh, yes. So what I was saying is, for example, last year we did expect that there would be a, finality on the regulations, and that did not happen. This year, it's really the hope that this is a COP that's going to deliver Article 6. Are there any discussions going on in the sideline that could potentially impede our, achieving of this particular milestone?
Yes, as I said in my presentation, the supervisory body, when it comes to 6.4, has completely changed the mode of work. Instead of coming with recommendation to be considered and adopted by the CMA with 190 parties, the CMA itself adopted the standard on methodologies and removals and request the CMA to take note of its mode of work and provide any additional guidance on what that body has done to do the correction that are needed, and that supervisory body will report annually on how it will implement those standards and get feedback from the CMA. Because in Dubai as well as in Sharm el-Sheikh, we needed to go through these lengthy technical documents and try to get an approval of each line, each concept, its effect with 196 people. That was very tough. This time, we expect, with the mode of work adopted by the supervisory body, we have many chance to get a positive outcome from Baku. Also, there is a lot of work from the presidency as well as from the secretariat in relation with the head of delegations as well as ministers. There have been many meetings, especially on Article 6 during June SB, during the pre-COP last month, and it's ongoing currently with two ministers that have been appointed from Singapore and New Zealand, working with the presidency to try to sort out all the issues that are outstanding within parties before coming in Baku for the negotiation. And as said by Perumal, they are expecting in the early days of the COP to adopt those decisions that are needed, because the whole community of carbon market, including the voluntary carbon market, including project developers, including investors, are waiting and since Glasgow for the completion of the rules in Article 6. We are very close to get the decision. We need to provide to our consistencies in Africa, for example, all the clarification they need to get the decision. And that has to be done by all the different consistency, the Arab group, the LMDC, the G77 and China. And we are more confident than we were in Dubai when it comes to get a positive result on Article 6. Thank you. Perumal.
No, I think who can speak with more assertiveness than you being a coordinator of the African group. I would say that, the SBM, the way that the SBM has done might invoke some conversation on a procedural aspect. The presidency is holding their consultations with different groups during the pre-sessions. So that should basically alleviate the concerns of people thinking that the supervisory body has not delivered a recommendation. It's a pure misunderstanding. They did deliver the recommendation, and they're asking for an endorsement and an approval. So I think from a procedural aspect, that could be covered. Then from a substance perspective, based on my at least observation, is that one area that we are quite far away in terms of the common grounds is when it comes to the international registry and the registry infrastructure. So with two major groups that have different views, and other countries are aligned to either of the countries as groups, but the mouthpieces of the two views are not the group or not the countries that are immediately looking to use Article 6 as part of their NDC implementation. So it's basically, I would say that it's the time for other countries who actually are going to implement. Mbai, I think you are putting WhatsApp chat and you are projecting it.
Okay. Let me come back to thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So suddenly I've seen that as a picture of mine, which I have sent you earlier.
Okay.
The issue, so the issue that is with respect to these registry systems. I think international registry, although it is being, the voices are coming from two major sets of countries, other countries are allied to one or the other voices. But I think it's a time for others to step up their voice, because those two countries that are speaking very well, the most vocal, are not the ones who are immediately looking to use Article 6 as part of their NDC. So to me, that's kind of like, to me, the one of the biggest fear, or if anything can go wrong. One, from a procedural aspect of what SBM has done, which I think is easily be manageable. Second is in terms of the registry. And the third would be, there would be some conversations around how to deal with probably some group of countries, particularly Coalition for Rainforest Nation countries might be coming forward and asking questions around the eligibility of Article 5.2 under 6.4, the way 6.4 has managed to accommodate their concerns from Dubai, and they may have new concerns. So then we will have those three issues. So to me, it's about Article 5.2 application within 6.4, international registry, and possibly the recommendation and the approach itself. It can happen both positively and negatively, as Mbai has said that at least I counted that 29 groups and countries together in the pre-COP have even asked the presidency to have an early adoption of the SBM recommendation in order not to get into the political weeds. So if that happens on the 11th of November, we are already claiming that 6.4 is fully functional. So that will be the big success that we are anticipating and expecting, but always in this process, until the last gavel is drawn onto the table, anything changes. That's the beauty of this process. But I'm hopeful. Yeah, Article 6 is always there for surprises. Mbai is smiling because even we didn't anticipate this outcome in Dubai, because we were actually thinking that we are having an outcome in Dubai. So this group is the unique group.
Yes, El Haj has a winner's smile, so I think we could look forward to it positively. Hope it all goes well. Thank you for coming through with this webinar. Actually, we're now well beyond 1 hour, and I'd like to ask if there's any other question. If not, we will go into closing remarks. Again, I would like to greatly appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you very much for the.
Thank you. I would like to appreciate El Haj Mbai and Perumal for the support that you provided to this webinar. I will hand over to Rita, who has turned on her camera and should be ready to speak. Rita, the floor is yours.
Great. No, thanks a lot, Andrew. And yeah, I reiterate what you just mentioned to thank Perumal so much, and Mbai, of course, as always, having the two of you so refreshing to have these exchanges with the Alliance focal points, but also the other colleagues within the respective ministries. I think it's always very great to have you, and thank you for your time. We know that you're in the middle of the Ready Cup session in Capo Verde, but you put aside time to join the session, and importantly to, of course, exchange on some of the key topics. We've had quite a few of the countries ask around these questions, you know, where should we put focus, what strategy moving forward. But I really, like Andrew said, the winner's smile. I think it's very positive that, and I've had this also several times the past few weeks, a lot of the stakeholders, of course, mentioning that we look forward to a positive outcome. I like that Perumal mentioned already 11th November, so fingers crossed. I think if we can have that by 11th, it builds quite a bit of trust in the market, but also not just on the technical side, but also importantly on the side of crowding in private sector finance, knowing that the private sector is not too patient when it comes to lengthy discussions and negotiations. So I think this would be a great a win for a lot of the stakeholders. So thank you so much also to Andrew for moderating the session, to the focal points and all the member countries that have joined the session. I know that a few of them are already traveling today, so they couldn't join the session today, but I'm sure you'll get to meet them in Baku. And good that you also mentioned there will be a session, hopefully with the Eastern Western Africa Alliance. So it will be great to meet again with everybody at that point. And of course, a lot of work has been put in. I know that both Mbaye and Perumo, you've been traveling all year, trying to agree on different aspects with the various bodies that you mentioned. But with this work that has been put in, we are really optimistic that it has lessened the load going towards the negotiations. So I know that at least I personally are very positive on what will be coming. So thanks again for the session. And of course, our colleagues from the UNFCCC and the RCC who are here as well, but also working together with them and the focal points and the coordinator to ensure that we continue such engagements within the alliances, also with the West Africa and the Caribbean, but looking forward to engaging further. And let's hope for the very best, but also wishing you safe travels to Baku that will be coming soon. So thank you all, and let's speak again soon. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Perumal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.